FAMU got over the hump that was Jackson State and proved that they are real contenders all in week 1. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusions. Starts with an S, ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. We have a stuffed episode. Morgan State has the victory of the week, but the game of the week was Jackson State versus FAMU. I have a definitive statement about Jackson, a definitive state about FAMU, and a couple of questions around Jackson State. But let's start off with the definitive statement, and that is Florida A&M is for real. I mean, real championship contenders. We knew that coming into the season. But when you have a game of this magnitude as your season opener, you really get to cement your status as a championship contender. I don't care what the preseason narratives are. I don't care where we place people in preseason polls, because all of these things are preseason. Once we get into the actual gameplay, then you really know what's what, because sometimes you doubt it, or sometimes you're just wrong. Now we know. And that's what I got out of week 1. And I'll tell you what, there was 2 concerning things for me, one more concerning than the other, but neither one gives me absolute just pause or hesitancy when it comes to labeling them a championship contender. One was Jeremy Moussa's kind of inconsistencies throughout the game. 2 were the kicking woes. You had 2 blocked kicks. I'll address the latter very briefly, but I don't expect that to happen again. Just if you're just going by percentages and likelihood, it's very unlikely that you're going to have 2 block kicks in a game. But then also I think Willie Simmons is going to get that together. But you may wonder, isn't that a bit of a contradiction for you to say you believe them to be a true championship contender and then begin with 2 of the biggest flaws from the game? It may seem that way, but I need you to follow me and just keep going on this journey with me, right? So with Jeremy Moussa, he had his moments where he looked off. But the thing is, I don't expect him to do that often. The same way that I expect them to get the kicking game together, I don't expect Jeremy Moussa to have the bad spots that we've seen him in on a consistent basis. And if he can get rid of that, which he did after the first 2 games last year, let's hope that it doesn't take that long, right? But if he can get into the groove like he did towards the beginning to the end of last season, and he can be that offensive player that we believe he is capable of being, which he showed himself to be at different moments within this game. It's not like it was just all bad. He had an average game because he had really high spots mixed with some overthrows and some bad passes, honestly. But it was an average game overall. If we can lean more towards the good Jeremy Moussa, this is the dominant team. Because through everything that he did wrong, this game wasn't really that close. There was a moment, that fumble, Irv Mulligan's fumble, that was kind of, it would have been, I really think that whatever it was called on the field is what it was going to be in replay, because I couldn't even see the ball. I couldn't see the ball at all, but this isn't even about Jackson State. This game wasn't even really that close, and Jeremy Moussa didn't play his best. If Jeremy Moussa plays his best, this is an even worse blowout. This is an actual blowout. at the end of the game, right? You had wide receivers that I thought showed themselves to be talented. I thought that the running back room, because let me fall back to the wide receivers. When you look at the wide receivers, they're wide open. They're wide open. He was just missing them at times. Well, I can sit here and I can talk about Jeremy Moussa's overthrows and just missing some wide receivers and just really overall seeming a tad bit shaky. But they were also wide open, which means the wide receivers were doing their job exceptionally. It's just, you got the downside, but I'm going to highlight the positive too, because I don't believe that the downside will be consistent, but I do believe that the positive has the ability to be a week in and week out occurrence where you get a lot of wide open wide receivers because this is a talented room. Then you look at the running backs. The running backs were one of the most pleasant surprises for FAMU. We know that they dedicated and really invested in that running back room over the offseason. And I really liked what Terrell Jennings, and then Jah'merae Sheread really brought to the game because they were phenomenal. And I thought that when you paired the running game with the passing game and what we think it'll be, this has the ability to be the most complete offense in the SWAC. This has the ability to be a dominant offense in 2023. The offensive line, I thought, held up pretty well. Of course, you always are going to have your moments, but we'll speak about Jackson State and their moments, if that's what you want to call it, in segment 2. Then you look at the defense. The defense played really well. The defensive line, I thought, was extremely attacking for Florida A&M. I thought they were phenomenal. And he got Jason Brown before he ended up getting injured. I believe he was injured. I meant to check out the press conference, so forgive me if I say something and TCS spoke on this already, but they made Jason Brown look very uncomfortable. That fumble felt like just kind of a discomfort fumble. Like I'm rushing it. He just seemed off. I know what the numbers said when he wasn't pressured versus when he was pressured, but he was pressured a lot. There was a point where he was 2 for 7 under the pressure, and he was like, I think maybe 70% when he wasn't pressured. So it was a vast difference. But even those ones where he wasn't under pressure, they weren't overly great. He had a deep ball at the beginning, but FAMU's defense really shut that down. And not only that, I think it would have been even worse if Zy McDonald didn't come in, because I think that they had the great game plan for what to stop when it came to Jackson State. Specifically, there was one play in which they did the simple rollout that they did all week against South Carolina State, and FAMU was right there for it. You're not about to throw a 2-yard pass and get 40 yards on us. Matter of fact, we're not even going to let you throw the 2-yard pass to get 2 yards on us. And it ended up being an incompletion. But even that pass was not pressured, I don't believe, and he still missed the target. It was one of those things where I really felt like they were explosive on special teams. Jah'merae Sheread, Marcus Riley, who absolutely exploded and kicked the game off with a touchdown on the opening kickoff. Like, these are the type of things that you see. Explosive special teams that can really change the field position game. Somebody asked me, they didn't really mean it was rhetorical, but I ended up answering. I didn't know it was rhetorical at the time. But they asked me, what makes me think that FAMU can beat Jackson State? I wasn't even giving a prediction, but just the idea that this can be a close game. And I told them they have a quality quarterback, high potential in the wide receiver room, and talent on every single level of that defense. They one-upped me by adding in running back play. And that really added another dynamic to the offense that I wasn't confident in speaking on at the moment. Of the 3 that I named, the only one that didn't happen was quarterback play. And their quarterback is the preseason SWAC player of the year. I'm pretty sure that he's going to get it together. If he doesn't, okay. But if I told you as a FAMU fan that you were going to not really have this game be close throughout the majority of the 60 minutes, and Jeremy Moussa did not play his best, you will take that 9 times out of 10. And the only reason you won't take it 10 out of 10 is because you probably wanted the lead to be bigger. This was a phenomenal game on all aspects, and I believe that if they can keep everything that they did today at a high level to continue being at high level through the rest of the season, Jeremy Moussa will come around, and it'll be very difficult to stop FAMU. And maybe this is the year that they get to the Celebration Bowl. But that would mean Jackson State will miss out. And I have major questions for Jackson State, and I'll answer those questions. I won't only pose the question, but I will answer those questions as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Brewing, and much like Marcus Riley, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the game for non-alcoholic beers. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. And the reason I picked Marcus Riley is because when he took the opening kickoff for a touchdown, I felt like that set the tone, that absolutely changed the game before it even really got going. And it was like, okay, this might be FAMU's day. And it was the first time we said that. But the thing for Athletic Brewing is that they are fit for all life. You want to go to your kid's soccer game, you want to be anywhere. They're non-alcoholic brews. No hangovers, ever. Don't have to worry about that, right? So you can find Athletic in store, online, or at bars around the country. They're absolutely delicious. And you can find Athletic Brewing at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code LOCKED ON and get 15% off your offer. That is Locked On, LOCKEDON, for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. As we keep on rolling with today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day in college football season is here. In Locked On, we're kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Live every single Friday from 10 to noon Central. So you can check it out on this channel. I was on there last week, I should say, with our games of the week. I did Southern versus Alabama State, and I did Jackson State versus FAMU. I think I'll be back this week as well doing the same thing. That's 10 to 12 noon. Every single Friday is a live 2-hour stream, so check that out. But Jackson State's loss brings you back to a very interesting question, and I'll get to it in a second, but it's kind of along the lines of one of our storylines from last week, and that storyline is, how good is Jackson State? And I think this was going to be a game that was going to decide if they were good or great. Not really fair, honestly. Not really fair to just base it off of 2 games. But if they would have came out and looked the same way that they did in week 0 as they did, or excuse me, looked the same way in week 1 as they did in week 0, then we probably would have labeled them pretty close to great. Pretty close to great. But bigger than that is, before we even get to how good is Jackson State, the question was, in week 0, was it more JSU being that good, or was it more South Carolina State being that bad? And when Jackson State doesn't look good against a quality team, because it's not as if this was close, Jackson State did not look good on Sunday. And when stuff like that happens, you begin to fall back to that same question. And I'll answer it the same way, but I'll get a little bit more in depth. I think that Jackson State is a good team. That did not waver for me. I know that they got beaten. It wasn't pretty, but I also think that FAMU is just that good. So I'm not ready to say that JSU is not a good team. All right. So I do still believe that they're a good team. But to directly answer the question, because all I did last week was say that I think that Jackson State is a good team, but I don't know. I have a little bit more of a clear understanding, and I believe that Jackson State's offense, I don't believe they're as dominant. You know, that really was concerning to me. I didn't like how stagnant they felt. They had moments, and if Jason Brown doesn't get injured, I don't know how long he'll be out. I couldn't find the Orange Blossom Classic post-game press conference. I was able to get a couple of quotes, but neither one was about TC, or was from TC Taylor discussing Jason Brown. But he came out of the locker room at halftime, and there was no more Jason Brown. But then they brought him in at certain moments, and they threw a pass to him, which was kind of weird because he seemed like he had a hand injury, and that just didn't make sense to me to put him on a route. It was a trick play to put your quarterback on a route when you know he has a hand injury. If he does have a hand, if that really is what the case is, that was a peculiar call. I'll just be honest with you. But you look at Jason Brown, when he was in the game, he looked very uncomfortable. FAMU's defensive line was getting after him, and it was crazy because the first play was a deep bomb, and it looked like things were good, and it looked like JSU and FAMU were going to go blow for blow offensively. I'm also not ready to just give up on him because I do believe in FAMU that much. Maybe I respect FAMU so much that I can't give so much flack to Jackson State. Also, I don't even have a full analysis because I only got really a half of what I believe they're going to be. When Zion McDonald came in, they moved the ball a lot better. But I think part of that had to do with the fact that FAMU wasn't ready for his legs. And then his passing did follow after that. But it was really the legs that got the offense going. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to be that dominant as they were. Of course, nothing, you got to bring it down sometimes. But I don't know if they're going to be, I don't think they're going to be, I'm putting up big points on the best defenses in the conference. I don't know if that's going to be the case. And that'll be something to watch next week. They play a better defense, or another good defense, I should say, in Southern. But one thing that was good was Irv Mulligan. I really did like Irv Mulligan. I thought that Mulligan was a guy who looked good in week 0. He looked good in week 1. I'm here for him being the full-time bell cow, the workhorse of this Jackson State running game. We didn't see J.D. Martin for any carries, but whenever he does return, I wouldn't mind still seeing Irv Mulligan be the guy who gets the majority of the carries. He's shown to me that he is capable of that role, and I think he's very effective in it. I like his vision. I like his aggressive running style. I really do like 5. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that he was probably the lone bright spot on that offense, So you have the offense that just, I don't think that they are going to be as good as they were. But then the defense, I think they have the ability to be a defense that does stop some of the best offenses. So I do believe they're as good as we saw in week 0. Did they do it this time? No. Because like I said, Moussa had some missed throws and this could have been worse. But at the same time, that being said, Jackson State had moments. It's not as if Jackson State's defense was just terrible. I believe that they showed more positive flashes than Jackson State's offense did. Jackson State's offense, they didn't move the ball for me. It just was stagnant. And one time they did, they ended up snapping the ball over the head of the kicker. Like, it was just bad. But you also had to look at it from the defensive side. I thought they got pressure a couple of times on Moussa. Some of those overthrows, plays that he should have still made. But I think some of those were probably attributed to him trying to rush to get the ball away before pressure got to him. At some times, it wasn't all the time. I don't even think I would say it was half of the time. I think it was probably in the minority, but it was enough times for me to notice. And I thought you seen a couple of plays from some defensive backs. Like, they had their moments. They just couldn't string along moments. And FAMU's a great offense, so that is kind of to be expected at times. Overall, more positive flashes from the defense, more reasons I feel like the defense can be one of the best defenses in the conference and can stop good offenses. That's my bar. Because against Jackson State versus South Carolina State, it looked like the offense could hang points up on anybody because they did that the last couple of years. They hung the points up on anybody. Also, very brief, but I was, and I didn't want to bring up Colorado for real, but I was pretty happy to see Shedeur keep doing what he did in the SWAC and the FBS level. I thought that was a pretty good nod. Like, look, believe it or not, America, some of our players are translatable. And it's not selfish. I also happen to like Shedeur. So I was happy to see that for him too. But then also to prove a point about HBCU athletics. Just thought of that when I said a bunch of points. Where was I? Lost my train of thought with that little tangent that I went on. But I don't know if the offense is going to be somebody who just puts up a bunch of points on the best defenses in the conference. I don't know. But the defense, I do believe, has the ability to stifle some of the best offenses. They just didn't do it this time. But they did also hold them scoreless for the last 35 minutes of the game. So there's that too. FAMU is a good team. Jackson State is a good team. We'll still be out on the look to see how good they are. But if the question is, was it more Jackson State or South Carolina State? I'm probably still going to say JSU. That's probably what I would have went with on Friday if I wasn't trying to be Switzerland. And that's what I'm going to say now because I don't care about being neutral in a situation. That's the way that I see it. But moving forward, it isn't Jackson State versus FAMU. That's not the result that gives us our victory of the week. Instead, it's Morgan State versus Richmond because the Bears just knocked off a top 20 team in the FCS coaches poll. And we'll describe why that's such a monumental victory as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the NFL season is coming up. It's Thursday. Oh, it feels good to say. The NFL season starts on Thursday. So, with that being said, you can go to fanduel.com/locked on, even if you just want to play around with a $5 bet. If you're new, you get up to $200 back in bonus bets. Win or lose, guaranteed you're getting $200 back or $200 in bonus bets back. If you're not new and you use $5, you're still going to get $100 off Sunday ticket. So make sure you're getting this in quickly because you don't want to miss week 1 of the NFL action. I don't care what anybody says. The NFL is exciting too. Everybody wants to say college football is exciting. Yeah. NFL is where it's at too. Let's not be mistaken. But you got to go to fanduel.com/locked on if you want to get the bonus to fully enjoy it. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. And I hope that you're enjoying your Labor Day. I'm glad that I'm a part of your Labor Day, whether you're on the way to go eat something or maybe you're just chilling in your house today, enjoying your day off. You decided to do it with me. So sincerely, I appreciate it. And I know that we just spent 2 segments discussing FAMU versus Jackson State. It was a monumental game. It was very important. This might have been the thing that finally won FAMU the SWAC East. Who knows? Time will only tell. Could be, though. Jackson State was looking to make a statement. They didn't make that statement. This game had big-time ramifications. And a lot of times when you have your game of the week, the result of that will be the victory of the week. But not this time. You have Morgan State versus Richmond, and that is your victory of the week because the Morgan State Bears just knocked off the preseason number 16 team in the nation, Richmond. Now, I went to the FCS coaches poll just to see how high they are. Sometimes you go to Stats Perform, I believe they're 18. I went to FCS coaches poll just because that was the first one for me that I went to. It said 16. Just so we're in full understanding, that means that the FCS coaches didn't feel like there were more than 15 teams who were better than Richmond. Okay, had to let that sit for a second. Just for reference purposes, North Carolina Central is 19. Now, I'm sure with how that went in week 1, Morgan State knocking off Richmond. Richmond will drop. North Carolina Central knocking off Winston-Salem State. They will rise. I'm sure that that's how this will happen. That being said, let's just keep it to Morgan State. And we may briefly reference North Carolina Central because this is a big deal. The same way that Central was a big deal when they knocked off New Hampshire. But that was in week 3. And I don't know how people felt about the North Carolina A&T victory, but this was a little bit different. And when you look at the circumstances around this game with Morgan State and Richmond, things are different because North Carolina Central was second in the MEAC the week prior or the season prior. Like it felt like they were on their way. They just knocked off North Carolina A&T. This was different. But when you look at what Morgan State was able to do, you're looking at a Morgan State team that they're not coming off of a great season, coming off of a decent season. Damon Wilson is in his second season as the head coach of the Bears. And this was a situation where most people weren't really banking on them to win. So this was a major upset. It was a major upset when Central won, I feel like. But when you think about Morgan State and where they were, they didn't have these super high hopes. So shout out to the defense. Shout out to the defense for locking down Richmond in the second half. Richmond had 50 yards in the last 30 minutes of play. And 32 of those yards came on the final play of the game. Absolute clampdown. Great defensive performance. They forced 2 forced fumbles in the second half after having a pick on the second drive. Right? Morgan State had their own fumble. They ended up getting 3. Richmond ended up getting 3, but they started the game or started that drive in field goal range. So that was the only points that you allowed in the second half was one that was basically gifted by the offense. No shot at the offense. But Morgan State, forced a fumble at the end of the game that led to the game-winning touchdown. So this is the game ball goes to you. The game ball goes to excuse me, I don't know. I just caught this random brain fart. I just keep wanting to call them Mississippi Valley for some reason. I don't know why I do. But Morgan State gets the game ball. The Morgan State defense really gets a lot of the praise because it was a defensive slugfest. It was a game that was not high scoring, didn't have a lot of movement. We seen what Morgan State's defense was about. And I love this because I did label them one of the sleepers in the MEAC. I do believe that it's a two-team conference, but I said South Carolina State. I know I got to eat that. But South Carolina State and Morgan State, to me, are sleeper teams. I think they could make some noise. They're not South Carolina State anymore, but Morgan now definitely gave me a little bit of confidence. And now we have to watch out for them. The MEAC is on notice. Was America on notice? Yes. Those who paying attention to the FCS landscape, they were put on notice. But I think the MEAC is put on notice as well that Morgan State is here and Morgan State is ready to compete. Matter of fact, he might just put the mouth of the South on notice. Morgan State, I respect you. I respect you. And I'll say it's a 2.5 team race. You still got a little bit proving to me to do that you can continue to sustain this. But if they can, I think it'll end up being a 3-team race for the MEAC between them, North Carolina Central, and then also Howard. But I appreciate you for not having me in contention with anybody. Continue to making this your first listen of the day, every day, or watch however you get down, wherever you listen to your podcast. On tomorrow's episode, I'm a man of my word. I'll break down this heartbreak. Texas Southern versus PV. This was a hard one. Man, look, people don't even follow me, tweeting me, saying, I know you're hurt. Yeah, I'm hurt. Yeah, I'm hurt. But I'm a man of my word. And I told you I'll address these either on Monday or Tuesday. So I'm enjoying my state fair. What is up with me today? I'm going to enjoy my Labor Day. And hope that you do the same before I have to come back and break down this heartbreaking loss. But in the meantime, in between time, keep smiling your face. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.